Turn the download button on today's Unleashed show. And before we get rolling, let me take a minute to say thank you to the great sponsors who let me do this podcast for you free twice a week. And that includes DraftKings, the destination for 1 week fantasy MMA. UFC 205 is Saturday night at Madison Square Garden in New York City, and I will be watching Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez fight it out in the octagon for that lightweight title belt. And if you're going to be watching and want to up the action a bit, then play fantasy MMA at DraftKings for your shot of the $300,000 in cash prizes they're awarding next weekend. And if you use my promo code UNLEASHED, you can play for free with your first deposit. Playing fantasy MMA at DraftKings is easy. You just pick 6 fighters. You can pick both Alvarez and McGregor if you want. You can pick Miesha Tate, too. It's her first return to the octagon since losing the bantamweight title at UFC 200. She's taking on Raquel Pennington, who's coming off a win against Holly Holm. So anyway, pick your fighters, stay under the salary cap, and then rack up points based on how your fight team performs. You get points for significant strikes, takedowns, submissions, and knockouts. And if you outscore the competition, you take home the money. So get to DraftKings.com now to choose your fighters, and you could seriously cash in next Saturday night. Use my promo code STEVE to play for free with your first deposit. That's my promo code STEVE to play for free for your shot at over $300,000 in prizes, only at DraftKings.com. Eligibility restrictions may apply. See website for details.
The following program is a podcast1.com production. He started in a small town in Texas. Worked his ass off to become one of the most famous wrestlers of all time.
We're going to take care of business tonight, and that's the bottom line.
And now he's dominating the world of on-demand audio. And he's doing it for the working man.
This is a damn good outlet for me to spew the bullshit off my brain.
Yeah! This is the Steve Austin Show. Unleashed.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the mean streets of Los Angeles, California today. I'm sitting here in my office at 316 Gimmick Street. Hell, it's about 11 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. I am headed down to Palm Desert, California for the dealers convention, the Kawasaki dealers convention. Going to be there hanging out for about 4 or 5 days representing that great brand, and looking forward to getting down there and riding around on some of the vehicles on the course. Last time I was down there, I had a torn rotator cuff and couldn't get on any of the equipment. But this year, I'm about 6-7 months out of my surgery. I'm ready to go out there and try out some different machines in comfort, driving at full speed. Looking forward to getting down there. I tell you what, man, just woke up this morning, shook off the cobwebs, ate breakfast. I'm sure a lot of you guys stayed up late like I did last night. Holy smokes, the election process. It started off Trump with a sound lead over Hillary Clinton. And I kept thinking, I was talking to my buddy Court Bauer on the telephone while all this was going on. And I was thinking, man, you know, here's the storyline. Trump's going to mount a lead. And then here's Hillary. She's going to make a big-ass comeback. She's going to win the state of California, which she did with probably 55 electoral votes. But, you know, I think, Trump ended up winning Michigan, and what was the other one? Wisconsin he needed, whatever it was. But holy smokes, man. Donald Trump was elected president of the United States just last night. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be an interesting 4 years. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. The last 8 years, you know, has been average. I'm not going to go on a political tirade, but if we'd have had 4 years of Clinton, I think it's just been more of the same. So hopefully Donald Trump can unite this country, take care of business, spin up the economy, and do a lot of the things that he said he was going to do, not build a wall, just do some of the things that he said he could do because he's a businessman. So anyway, we will see what happens in the next 4 years with Donald Trump as our illustrious president. And I tell you what, since that whole election process took place, there's a lot of pictures. I think there was one on Bleacher Report had me saying that if I was elected president as a write-in candidate, I would lower the prices of beer. Well, I didn't get elected. I can't lower the price of beer, but I can direct you to one fine beer, which is Steve Austin's Broken Skull IPA from El Segundo Brewing Company. Had to include a little plug in here in the open of the podcast. Hey, I'm going to keep this open kind of short. I got Sam Roberts and I got Jim Norton from SiriusXM. They stopped by the crib here a couple days ago, and we sat down and started shooting the breeze about everything under the sun. Y'all know Sam Roberts from, his wrestling podcast. He's interviewed just about everybody in the business. He's a super sharp guy. It's always fun to talk to him. They came by the crib here. I was needing an extra cord for an extra microphone, and Sam brought me a cord out of his bag and left it here at the house, so I now owe Sam Roberts a cord. And so Jim Norton also stopped by the house. And, man, it was nice to finally meet Jim Norton. I've been a big fan of his stand-up comedy work for so long. And I've met him, in the past, over at Opie and Anthony. And, they had a parting of the ways there. We'll talk about that on the podcast. But, man, that Jim Norton is a funny, funny guy. And when you sit down and talk with him in person, he's just a down-to-earth, likable guy, loves MMA. We're going to talk some UFC with Jim Norton, and Sam will kick in plenty of pro wrestling stuff. And, hey, man, we're just shooting a breeze. So, again, I'm going to keep this open short and get ready to get down the road to head to Palm Desert, heading there for about 4 or 5 days with Kawasaki. This is Kawasaki's 50th anniversary of being here in the United States of America. And I think Kawasaki, their motto is let the good times roll, and they do. I've owned more Kawasaki's in my life than any other motorcycle, four-wheeler, or UTV than I've ever had. So I'm a Kawasaki guy, looking forward to seeing everybody down there and having a good time riding that course and doing some demonstrations on the Mule Pro FXT and the Mule Pro FX, along with finally getting a chance to throw a leg over one of their four-wheelers and get it out there on the track. But enough about that. I got to take care of some business. But one more thing before I take care of this piece of business. Don't forget, this Sunday night, November 13th, season premiere of Steve Austin's Broken Skull Challenge, the toughest, baddest, coolest show on television. Sunday, November 13th, 10/9 Central. Do not miss the season premiere. This is the baddest show on TV. Set your DVRs. CMT 10/9 Central, November 13th. If you're looking for a little action on some of this weekend's football games, then get yourself to betdsi.com. Use my promo code Austin25. That's Austin and the number 25 with no space, and get $25 free when you register. And hey, don't worry about playing with BetDSI. They're one of the original online sports books. Been around for over 20 years. They set a lot of the lines you're already playing on, and more importantly, they pay. They built a solid reputation on payment of winnings. They take professional and novice action, and BetDSI.com is really quick and easy to use. You can play from your computer or from your phone or your tablet. They even got live betting, so if things ain't going your way at halftime, you can place another bet to try and cover. The site is so trusted that many professional players do their betting there. And right now, like I said, BetDSI.com is offering this beginning of the season special. Just use my promo code Austin25 when you sign up and get $25 free just to try the service. Or take advantage of their 100% bonus on your first deposit. They'll match what you deposit. So go to BetDSI.com and use my promo code Austin25. That's Austin and the number 25, no space between. Take advantage of the two great offers and win yourself some money. That's BetDSI.com.
Steve Austin, Unleashed.
All right, I'm sitting in podcasting 316 Gimmick Street. I got a computer in front of me. I got a Pearl Bear neon clock, a second hand that's spinning around like a rotisserie chicken in front of me. I got a stand-up comedian, radio personality, one of the funniest cats I know, Jim Norton. On my right, not Sam Roberts, host of the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, along with, hey, you guys got a show together now.
Yes, I'm also the co-host of Jim Norton and Sam Roberts every morning on SiriusXM.
Hey, man, I was reading a little bit about that. There was some soap opera going on down there.
Oh, yeah.
Is there bad blood now? What's going on with that, Jim?
I don't even know if it's bad blood or just no blood. We haven't talked. It's so weird. We have not spoken.
It seems like you guys are tight, man. You've been there since, like you said, before we started rolling, 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
A lot of history.
It is, but it's like a marriage. It's like any other relationship you have where it goes bad and then you don't want to talk to the person, or even when it's not bad, it's just there.
Right.
So we were ready to separate, and to be honest, I'm much happier with Sam, and I think Opie is happier in the afternoon with the guys he's been using. you need to get away. When there's all that tension in the room, it's not fun. This is a fucking fun gig. I don't want to walk into work and be unhappy.
Okay, well, how do you work this? Because you're still touring it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was on your website, so you got some stuff coming up. Because are you guys going every single day?
Yeah, we're every morning. Jim, if he's taking a weekend to go, like last weekend was Philly, right?
Yeah, so I'll be gone Friday.
Right, so like he'll be gone on the Friday, so I'll just take care of things on the Friday.
Will you bring in another guest, or you just sub and just do everything yourself?
I'll start off by myself and then bring in like a comedian, 2 or 3 people just that I know to kind of hang out and do the 3 hours. And it's a Friday show anyway, so it's a little looser. But we, just to keep the show alive while Jim is out there on the road, not only doing himself a service, but doing the show a service by getting in front of audiences and, reminding
I'm just doing them a disservice.
Hey, how did you get on the radio, first of all, with Opie back in the day?
With Andrew Dice Clay. I was touring with Dice. I was his opening act.
God dang, that guy was so funny for so long.
Yeah.
And then he kind of started trying to play to the chicks, and he kind of lost everybody. Now he made a comeback within the last few years.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan, so go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, Dice was great to me.
Yeah.
Andrew changed my life. He took me to on tour, and he would bring me in Opie and Anthony. He would say, hey, you got to talk to my opener. He's hilarious. Like, Dice talked me up to those guys, so I did a phoner. I wasn't good, but they were scared of him, so they were nice to me. And then when I started going in, it just became the natural progression. Opie liked me. Anthony was fine with me going in. I was dirty. I talked about my perversions, and they just thought it was entertaining radio.
Entertaining radio?
Yeah, they liked the fact that I was honest and I wasn't afraid. And then once I got arrested, me and Louis Black were on the voyeur bus. We got arrested, spent the night in jail. Yeah,
a bunch of topless chicks on a bus while you're doing the radio show, right?
Yeah, and it was like we weren't even with them. We were just calling into the radio show. And so after me and Louis spent the night in jail, Opie goes, anytime you want to come in, carte blanche just to come in. So then I started coming in twice a week, and then he goes, come in more, and they got me paid. And then we promptly got fired for 2 years and then came back on satellite in 04.
What is the punishment for driving around the city with a bunch of topless chicks in a bus? I mean, you had to be reprimanded by you were arrested, right?
We were arrested. We were
put charged with.
That's what the problem was. They couldn't think of anything to charge us with. They charged us with promoting the lewdness of a body. And that was it. We spent 27 hours in jail promoting the lewdness of a body, and the judge was furious. He said, you're wasting their time and you're wasting the court's time.
27 hours in a correctional facility. How did you fare, Jim?
Not well. I was a smoker. I didn't get raped, but I wasn't there long enough. It would have happened. They were fucking eyeing me up.
I was about to say, is a smoker a nickname for something? This one over here, he's a smoker.
Had it been a couple years stretch, maybe it could have turned into a bad thing. The worst of it was not having your cigarettes.
Not having my cigarettes and having a shit, and the toilets are so dirty, I couldn't shit.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been to a couple of jails, just kind of passing through looking. I've never been arrested in my life. But, back in the old days when I was growing up in Edna, Texas, we'd go down to the sheriff's department. The cops were cool. They'd show you all the shivs and stuff like that. They were then just kind of framed up, and they'd lock you behind the bars. Man, as soon as those bars clacked, I realized that a life of crime was not for me. I'm claustrophobic to begin with.
Oh, you are?
All of a sudden, you shut them bars, mister. I don't care if it's a 10-foot cell, a 5-foot cell, or a 20-foot cell. You ain't going to get out. So therein lies the fact that you're in there with a bunch of people. Not so good, my friend.
Now, are you a guy who doesn't like elevators, or are you okay with that?
I'm good with elevators, but I tell you what, being here in Los Angeles a couple years ago, we were in a skyscraper about 27 floors up, and we're going up there, and man, all of a sudden, when those elevators kind of pause a little bit, and you're thinking, okay, this motherfucker's stuck. Or if there's going to be an earthquake and the thing starts wobbling like this, that bothers me. We were over, I think it was right after I wrote The Stone Cold Truth a long time ago. I barely contributed to that book. Jim Ross gets the credit on that. I spoke into a recorder for about 4 hours, but nonetheless, we were promoting that at Piccadilly Square. We got about 15 people in one of those elevators. It seems like it's 100 years old because everything in England is really old. And that's with respect to my UK fans because I got a huge fan base over there, respect. But then all of a sudden, that elevator starts creaking a little bit, and it just stops between the floors. And I'm like, okay, dude, you're Stone Cold Steve Austin. There's a bunch of women, guys. We're just crap, like sardines in a can. And I'm thinking, man, for some reason, I got about to come out of my skin. I'm about to take my shirt off. I don't know what good taking my shirt off is going to do, but I just need some space. finally, that stomach started moving. The happy ending to the story, Jim, is I'm sitting here talking to you, so I survived.
Right.
But it really freaked me out, and I was just ready to get the fuck out of the elevator. So, yeah, I just don't do good, especially on MRIs, stuff like that. Just don't dig it.
What is the feeling? Because I get weird things when I'm trying to sleep. I'm a very bad breather. I have sinus problems. I have sleep apnea. Sometimes I'm like, I can't breathe. I have to sit up in bed and prop myself in my right elbow. I mean, I can take a deep breath, but I feel like I can't breathe. Is that what it feels like when you're in one of those claustrophobic moments?
To me, it's just a complete lack of, like for instance, if I go into an MRI tube, I'm like this. And I'm not the biggest guy, in professional wrestling ring, but all of a sudden I'm a bigger than average human being. And so when your shoulders are hunched in like this and your arms are down here by your legs, if someone were to put a cap on either end of that MRI tube, you ain't going nowhere because I come from the business where everybody's ribbing you, right?
Yeah.
Or if there's another earthquake, the power goes down, I'm trapped in that motherfucker. So you're helpless. I don't like being helpless.
Right.
So I scared, I just got finished interviewing a Navy SEAL, and he was telling me about this box breathing technique for relaxation. 5 count in,
yes.
Hold, 5 count out, hold without any air, 5 count in, repeat. So all of a sudden I started freaking out when the chick put me in there, and I started doing the box breathing, 5 in, 5 out. By about 2 minutes of that, I squeezed that little bulb. I said, get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was a whole other story I told on the podcast of how they was able to get me back in there, required some medicinal things that I went down to the drugstore and get. But anyway, so going back to you guys, how did you guys decide to come up with the show that you guys came up with?
Well, Jim and Opie were doing the show. Anthony was gone. Jim and Opie were doing the show for 2 years, and they decided they were separating. They were going to move on at the end of the contract. They weren't going to do the show together, and they didn't really know what they were going to do. They just knew they weren't doing it together.
Yeah.
And the company first came to me, the guy who runs the company, and said, hey, Jim and Opie are separating. I was like, yeah, I know. And he said, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of you doing a show with Jim? And I was like, well, at that point, I'm doing my own show at nights. I know Jim is getting out of this radio partnership. I don't know what he wants. I said, I'll talk to Jim about it. And Jim and I had a bunch of conversations about, what we wanted to do, how we would do it. We did a few test shows in the morning just because there was some free time, and I had him come in on my night show and just figure out if the chemistry was there, if it was something we could do every day.
Let's see how it feels just talking back and forth for a few hours a day. Yeah, we had to check.
And we had a good time. And then we both realized that we thought it would be bigger for both of us in terms of what we wanted to do if we did it together.
And Sam, I know Sam for 10 years, so he's always been on Opie. We were Jocktober, other radio shows. Right. Sam was always leading the charge. He's been an on-air guy with us for a long time, so we were totally comfortable together. I know he's a funny guy, he's a capable guy, he's a smart dude, so I had no doubts about that. It was just how did we gel? Because you have to, if you're going to do radio every day with somebody and you don't click. And that's what happened with me and Opie. We just stopped clicking.
Right.
It just wasn't fun anymore, and we would not look at each other. That lack of eye contact when you're unhappy with each other, like a bad marriage.
That's uncomfortable.
Oh, man, it's awful.
So you guys, stand-up comedian, you're able to talk to
professional broadcaster.
You're a professional broadcaster. Talk to anybody about anything and never miss a beat.
Right.
So on y'all's normal gig, what's this kind of subject matter that y'all like to talk about? Because I know you have your wrestling podcast. Do you try to stay away from wrestling if you guys are together?
Yeah, if there's a big wrestler who's in town that wants to do the morning show, I'll talk to Jim and we'll have him on. Or if there's some kind of story that goes beyond pro wrestling, like if it's a national story.
Okay.
But beyond that.
But what about politics? Election going
everything, sure.
We like to talk about the news. We like to talk about politics. We like to keep it topical and talk about our lives that way. But we like to hit more of a show that's going to be something that people are talking about, not a niche of people, not like a hobbyist show. Because I got my wrestling podcast. He's got his UFC podcast. So we got those things on the side, and we can come together and do the morning show that's a very mainstream sort of.
And I like interviewing wrestlers. I know very little about them, and Sam knows everything. But wrestlers are great interviews always because you guys are so good on the mic. It's always a fun time. It's always an interesting talk, always open.
There's a couple every now and then that'll leave you hanging. But by and large, most of them got a pretty good story to tell. And I'm glad you reminded me about the UFC podcast, you and Matt Serra.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that. They advertise that great on the paper.
They do, right?
Way. So how's that going?
It's great.
How's Sarah to work with? He looks like he's a funny bastard.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
And he's a fucking maniac. Matt comes in. I told Matt, you're such a fucking New York guy. guy. Like, he just is, like, he won't demand anything, but if it's too hot, he'll be like, it has that air conditioning. He's just that dude, and he's a killer, and he's just a gentle, lovely guy. Like, he's just a sweet guy. Everyone in the UFC loves him. He's like walking through an event with him. Every fighter knows him. I mean, he beat GSP. It's a legendary fight that he fought.
Right.
He's just considered one of the greats.
So what's he doing now? Because I always deal with guys. I just got finished talking with Kurt Angle the other day. I'd read some headline. I was taking 65 Vicodins a day. And I said, man, I got to talk to you about that. So we finally lined it up and we started talking. And, Kurt's looking at the back end of his career. A lot of guys want to go for that last run or that last shot with WWE. Kind of like Goldberg's doing it right now.
Right.
I love it. And so I always look back at guys transitioning out of the wrestling business, the squared circle business. What do they do? So what's Matt doing? Is he training people? Does he have a training center? Is there? I'm not asking for dollars, but is there money in that? Because there was last thing, Jim.
Sure.
Paul Orndorff had to tell me, Mr. Wonderful, Steve, there is life after wrestling. And I said, is there? He goes, oh, you're damn right there is. And there is. So tell me about life after the UFC.
What he's doing, it's funny, what Matt's doing, he's got 2 schools, Sarah, I think it's Sarah BJJ, it's called, in Long Island. And he's always bugging me to come train, like, he's encouraging me to, but I'm like, I can't go out to Long Island. He does Dana White looking for a fight with him and Dana. We'll go city to city. And he makes, I think, a good living from his schools. He goes out and he teaches. He does the podcast. He does the thing with Dana. Matt's a very active ex-fighter. He's very sought after, so people love talking to Sarah. So he's a guy who will always, it's like Chuck Liddell, these spokespeople for the sport who will always have a foot in the door and always be employed.
Plus, he's so sharp and so with it. We had him on the morning show and completely away from the world of MMA because I'll watch the fight sometimes, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
But out of that world, he came in and he was able to take the room over. Just shooting the shit with us.
Just a funny guy.
Yeah, funny guy and sharp guy. Like, he's quick, and he's just with it in these conversations.
Yeah, he's 100, and he's a really sweet guy, too. Like, we have a great camaraderie on the podcast, and he's much more important to the UFC than I am, and he never acts like that. He never feels that way. He's a great partner, and that's important when you're in a partnership to have somebody who doesn't try to outdo you or be better than you. It's just, what do you think? It's like a real 50-50 thing.
All right, before we go any further, let me tell you what's making it a little easier for me to do 2 podcasts for you free every week. MeUndies. And they ain't making it easier because they're a sponsor. They're making it easier because it's a lot more comfortable sitting in this chair at my desk at 316 Gimmick Street for a few hours wearing MeUndies. Hey, they sent me a box full of the camouflage design. The ones made out of that modal fabric, which is 3 times softer than cotton, and they ain't lying. These are about the softest, most comfortable underwear on the planet. And for the price of 2 cocktails, you can have MeUndies delivered right to your front door. And you can experience exactly what I'm experiencing. And did I mention that MeUndies offers free shipping in the U.S. and Canada? Well, I just did. And if these ain't the most comfortable, best-fitting underwear you've ever worn, MeUndies will refund your money and let you keep your first pair for free. But I'm telling you, you ain't going to return these. And that's why, for a limited time, my listeners also get this great deal. 20% off your first order when you go to MeUndies.com/Steve Austin. Did you get that? MeUndies.com/Steve Austin to get 20% off your first order and free shipping in the U.S. and Canada. One more time for the hearing impaired. MeUndies.com/Steve Austin.
Hey everybody, it's Shaq. Have you had a chance to check out the #1 podcast on Podcast One? That's right, the Big Podcast with Shaq. Me and my co-hosts John Kincaid and Rob Jenners, we have a blast. With way more than just sports, we have the biggest guests from entertainment to the NBA. I promise you've never ever heard a show like this. The Big Podcast with Shaq, with a new episode every Monday at podcastone.com.
So how long have you been a fan of UFC or MMA in general?
UFC, I think Joe started bringing Rogan would bring guys in probably 2005. And I started watching it after that, like when Liddell was fighting and Mirko Cro Cop and those guys, but he came over to the UFC. But I mean, I'm not like a fan that's like knows everything about every fighter, but it became more and more. The more I interviewed those guys, there wasn't any of them that were dicks. They were all good guys. I liked them all, so I became a bigger and bigger fan. So I would say for the last 7 years, I've been a pretty big fan. Maybe 7, 8 years. I've really.
So, do you know what's going on when you're watching? Because I love listening to Joe Rogan call those matches, and I love Brian Stan.
He's great too.
I missed this last month when Joe Rogan wasn't there, but man, he's talking about, hey man, here's where he's going next, and I've been a fan, kind of like you. I really was a fan way back in the day before it evolved into what it turned into, and now I'm just like a super fan. I don't miss any pay-per-views. But when you got Rogan in your ear and he's saying, oh, he's got to go do this to get out, or do this to get out of the, or he's in a butterfly guard or whatever, and he can sit there and tell the story for me, so I get it. Are you at that level?
No, I can go. He just kicked him. You know, I cannot do
Almost
that.
sprayed water on my fucking MacBook. Don't do that again, Jim.
Joe. I think he's the best announcer in sports because
I do too.
The anticipation. Here's when Joe convinced me. The first Bisping Dan Henderson fight. Henderson's right is a fucking sledgehammer, and Bisping kept moving, and Joe's like, he's got to stop doing that. He's moving, and then at 30, pow. And I'm like, that son of a bitch understood the subtlety of the movement. Right. He's so good at anticipating. Yeah, Joe's great.
How about that rematch? It was 7 years in the making, and then at the end of the fight, it looked like Bisping had lost. But while you were watching the fight, I thought Bisping was winning, and indeed he held on to the belt. What were your thoughts after that fight?
I thought the same thing. I was amazed it went 5 rounds. Nobody. It was like Conor and Nate too. No one saw that going 5 rounds. And I thought Bisping deserved to keep the belt. You got to really beat the champion. He had a couple of really bad moments. He was bloody, but I think Bisping overall kept his belt. I was very impressed that it went 5 rounds, though. I mean, the fact that he kept away from Henderson's right for 5 rounds was amazing.
I thought that one time when Hendo knocked him down, took him. Boom, he went down. I just think he almost gassed himself trying too hard for the knockout and maybe should have been a little bit more patient. And here's me, a retired pro wrestler, telling a legendary guy, my opinion. But, man, if he'd have just held back a little bit, because it just seemed after that, I mean, he just never had that sense of urgency or the gas or the oxygen to get to the next level to do more damage to Bisping than he was.
I think you're right. I think he was just a little bit tired. He was breathing really heavy, and Joe was pointing that out, how heavy he was. He definitely looked like he was winning. There's a couple of moments where those guys were both just...
Oh, yeah.
Because he's 46. I think Bisping's 37. I mean, that's been around for a while. That was a tough fight. Those guys were both seemed like they had a little bit... they wanted a little bit of a break.
But what a shocker, before we switch gears and get out of MMA, what a shocker when Bisping got in there with Rockhold, and it seemed like Rockhold seemed like he came in and he just knew he was going to win this fight, and pop. Not so fast, my friend, and we got a new champion. I go all the way to England. What a story Michael Bisping has been ever since he's come here. And at first, when he came over, I was kind of like a heel because he can talk a lot of shit.
Oh, he's great.
Tremendous on the microphone.
Great.
But then when I saw him start analyzing and breaking down fights, I was like, man, I really like this guy because he's a likable guy. So now I'm a huge fan.
He's so funny, and he is a really nice guy too. Like I've sat next to him at fights, and he's just a really good guy. But he's like, oh, he's a cheating piece of shit. He will talk shit about anybody. Yeah. And I love the fact that he will. Who's another great color guy on the mic is Dominic Cruz. Does a great job of calling fights, and he's the co-main on the Ronda fight is him and Cody Garbrandt. That's another great fight that I can't wait for.
That is too, but I like Dominic when DC. Daniel Cormier, when they're together and they're breaking down the fights, they're saying, hey, what this guy has to do to win. I'm just a big fan.
Yeah, it's nice. I love watching it, and the fighters are all sweet guys. They're all like really like they're humble. They're nice dudes. They're not quite the interviews that wrestlers are. Wrestlers just have the more they are just better and more outgoing. So I would rather probably interview a guy who's a WWE. Even though I'm a UFC fanatic.
But there's a couple of guys that really know how to sell fights. Connor's one, Bisping's one, Cal Sonnen's one.
Cowboy.
Chael Sonnen. Yeah. He's amazing. Cowboy Cerrone.
He's one. I mean, he's so laid back, and that dude just wants to fight. Sam, with that being said, those guys being able to talk people into the building also, put on a hell of a show, talking to pro wrestlers.
Yeah.
Who have you talked to lately that has, hey man, there's a lot more here than I originally thought? One of them, I saw one of your interviews with Ryback, and I came away talking from my conversation with Ryback as being impressed by the guy.
Yeah, Ryback, the first time I talked to him is when he first started talking about all this like positive energy and reading The Secret and all this stuff that he hadn't talked about on TV yet. So that's when I first started to realize that there was way more than I thought under the surface. The trick with wrestlers, though, especially nowadays, is if you really want to get below the surface, you have to either find a guy who's outside of WWE or who's fed up in there, because people are very scared to kind of give a full-on opinion about things. You know what I mean? I see the wheels turning of how is this going to be perceived? What kind of feedback am I going to get on this? Am I saying the right thing? And that's not, as you know.
You're 100% correct, because a lot of times when I'm talking to some of those cats and they're gainfully employed by WWE, you try to have as good a conversation as you can, but with respect to booking, hey man, shoot, when I asked Big Show, how do you think you're being booked? Like shit.
Right.
But, he's been around long enough. He doesn't give a shit.
Right.
And Vince is always going to keep him. He's always going to be on time. He's always going to be there. But to your point, hey man, if someone's not being booked right or they're losing too much, they just can't come out here on your show, Jim's show, or my show and just start openly venting.
You know who's a great interview right now, though?
Who?
Daniel Bryan.
I think he's always been a great interview.
He's especially, I find, now, though, because he's blatantly saying he doesn't he's kind of doing what he's told to do because he's under contract, but he said, like, what are you going to fire me? Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he's kind of...
But still, I still think there's a veil that's never going to be lifted. I mean, kayfabe is broken. We all know that. But yeah, to your point, you just can't you can't pry too much.
Right.
And, hey man, give me your honest thoughts on something, or you can get about as honest as they can be with you.
Right.
But it ain't gonna be like all of a sudden we hit the stop button and we'll start talking about shit.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
The whole conversation change into something we can actually really, really talk about.
I have a question. What does it mean being booked like shit? Does that mean getting bad matches?
Yeah, I mean these storylines or something like that.
Oh.
Hey Jim, we want you to dress up like this, and maybe wear a couple of horns out of your head, and we're gonna put a tail on you, and you're gonna get beat every week. Just bad storylines. Go ahead.
What was great, right before SummerSlam, I did an event at Caroline's, and I did a live podcast. First, I had Gallows and Anderson, which was great. It was a great interview. Then I had Kevin Owens after them that same afternoon. And both those, we did like an hour. Both were great. And both of those, I came back with this sense of the best interviews, especially from people like that, are like, man, why isn't more of that on TV? Like, especially the Gallows and Anderson interview. That, and I would hope anybody that listened to that is thinking, why isn't that on TV?
Well, see, then that's my big thing. I mean, just like the question I asked Jim, just talking to those MMA guys, UFC guys, they're doing pro wrestling better than pro wrestling's doing pro wrestling, just because I just think, and I don't want to be critical, but WWE, man, their whole universe, it's their cameras, it's their ring, it's their product, it's their stuff. They can make any rule they want. And so back, I want to say in the Attitude Era, because my favorite time was the mid-'80s, NWA, WCW, World Class in Dallas, before it was on the downhill. All that good shit that Bill Watts was doing in Mid-South Power Pro, serious shit, right? And a blinding Junkyard Dog, when the Freebirds did that, all that kind of good stuff. Just in a serious light. That's what I mean. Because UFC's done in a serious light. Hey, somebody can say something funny, someone can talk trash, but it's presented in a serious light because it's a shoot sport. Wrestling is supposed to be, it's based on a shoot sport.
Suspension of disbelief, right?
Yeah. So that's why, NXT, I love those pay-per-views because they're presented in a real fashion. Corey Graves and other guy do an outstanding job of staying within the storylines and just keeping everything tight. They're not selling anything, no apps, no bullshit. It's all about wrestling, and I'm able to immerse myself. Jesus Christ, I've been in wrestling business since '89. I've been out since 2003, but I'm still a fan. I'm still a wrestler, retired, but I still want to believe. So when I watch NXT, I'm like, I can buy into this, almost like the good old days of the '80s.
So you're still, it's amazing. You've been out for that many years, and you're still like a centrally named guy in wrestling. It's really like odd to see somebody it's like Liddell in MMA. I equate it with that. Like, you're always going to be one of those guys that just seems to be talked about whenever wrestling is talked about.
Man, it's been a good thing to be able to do the podcast, and I got in 3 years ago, give or take. And it was a nice outlet for me, and the fact that so many people listen to the damn thing is a blessing. But like I said, I'd never want to bury anybody on the show, and if you can kind of light a spark under someone every now and then, just to help them, but you just don't want to trash people.
But I'll tell you, people are listening because speaking of the Kevin Owens interview, I was talking to him about all the trash he talks in the ring. I said that's one of the most entertaining things is that you're running your mouth the entire match, and he said that he met you in an airport as a young man, just a big Stone Cold fan. He had just started wrestling a couple years ago, and you told him to just keep running your mouth when you're in there. Just keep going.
Yeah, I remember that. Man, I was about halfway haggard. We'd been on the road for a good while, and I'll never forget that. And I've forgotten most of my career. But I think Sami Zayn or somebody was traveling with him at the same time, and he was telling me about some of his moves that he does. And, you know, he asked, I think, if I had any pointers for him. I said, dude, just learn how to run your mouth. Keep running your mouth.
Do you ever, like, find young comedians that are looking for advice, or encounter young comedians that are like don't really need your advice because they think they know it all, and
I'll get a lot of emails from comedians asking for advice, or they would call up and ask, and I'll always just tell them the basics because I don't know they might not be funny, so I don't know them. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. This is what you should do if you want to succeed. Like, this is the business side. If you're funny, do this, this, and this, and it will help. But yeah, anyone that wouldn't want, I wouldn't offer it though to somebody unless I knew him. Or unless we were having a weird moment. If I was having a weird moment in an interview, that's a little bit different.
Right.
Then you do what you got to do, especially if a guy's being a dick.
Not to switch the subject, but a weird moment in an interview. Just got finished talking to Jesse Ventura. He was here in a crib the other day. And I know in 2009, y'all had a little bit of a beef, and he walked out. And then, I don't know, did you guys ever get back on the radio together?
No, Jesse walked out very angry. And there's a video.
He was talking about the Constitution stuff.
Yeah, and 9/11. And
yeah.
It was the video doesn't tell the story because the video, Opie only had X amount of memory on his video. So he was taking little snippets, but the entire audio interview, you could see that Jesse was kind of being a little nasty to me. I mean, not horrible, but just I didn't agree with him on this, and he was
discrediting you a little bit instead of saying, well, this is just a guy who doesn't agree with me.
Right, but
he was almost saying, like, your opinion doesn't count.
Yeah, but of course, like, I respected that he's a Navy SEAL and military.
Right.
Of course I did. So we had that big fight. He said, I'll never come back on the show again, and I'm always okay with whoever wants to and whoever doesn't. We saw him recently after we interviewed Chris Kyle, and that whole Chris Kyle, I knocked Jesse out thing came from our show. Opie was actually informed about that, and he asked Chris, was it Jesse? Or I forget how, and he goes, yeah, it was Jesse. O'Reilly gets it. And then O'Reilly runs with it, and that's how it became giant news because Bill O'Reilly got it. But we had it that morning. And then Jesse, I believed Jesse. When I heard his explanation on Alex Jones, I even said publicly, I think Jesse sounds like he's telling the truth. He sounds like a guy who is not lying when he says this.
Right.
So we wound up sticking up for him in a way, even though we liked Chris. We had interviewed him on the phone as well as in person. Then he gets killed, and the whole lawsuit happens or continues. So Jesse came by our studio not long ago. It was me and Opie, and it was right after he got the judgment. And Jesse just opens our studio door and goes, he was a liar, and closes the door, which was funny, you know. And then people told him at one point, you know, Jim actually said he did believe you. I don't have it out for him, so I don't think he likes me or respects me, and I get it. When I talk to him again, sure. But I mean, I don't like when somebody, if we're having a discussion and we disagree, I'm not going to poke Jesse physically. So if we're having an argument and he does something really alpha to me, that really gets me angry, and I'm willing to take the consequences of it. But I'm not a tough guy at all. It's like one of the things, like, I don't like that energy from someone when I'm not trying to give the other side of that energy. Like when he was leaving, he goes, thanks for your service, and he pats me really hard. And I knew what he was doing. Like, you know, if you were talking to a guy and he looked at you a certain way or he poked you, you would say, I know what you just did.
Right.
I couldn't prove it in court, but we both know what you just did. So that kind of really got me angry, and that was why I said something very rude to him on the way out. But I wish we didn't fight because I do like the guy. I don't have any hatred for Jesse Ventura.
Man, I always dug Jesse because, first of all, I was a fan of his heel commentary work. You know, when Vince had the idea when he had the pulmonary embolism and had to retire from the ring after only 10 years. And I think that was a silver lining in a dark cloud because that's where his true genius was. You know, you give that guy a microphone and he's gold. And when he came over here, man, I'd watched I don't know how many interviews, but I knew every Jesse loop. I knew every Jesse story. And because he was promoting Marijuana Manifesto, I knew which ones to keep him off of because everybody else had done got those same stories.
Yeah.
So I was able to do that. Now, he'll get one or two in on you, but he's just a really smart guy. He's very well read, and he does the conspiracy theory things, and he's highly intelligent, but he has that voice. And when he believes he's right, I mean, that's just all there is to it. He believes he's right. Because I could go back and forth with him about certain things, but that was not my agenda on the show.
Yeah.
We shot the breeze, talked wrestling, pushed his book, and it was wonderful.
He said some things that we interviewed him 3 times. That argument we had was the third. And the first time we didn't really click. Second time we got along great, and then the third time we had that argument. But he said some great things, like about how in the United States that you're rewarded for bad behavior. I forget what he was talking about, but he's made some really smart points, and
right.
I really enjoyed listening to him, except for that one thing that we disagreed with, and I have a big mouth, and I just couldn't shut up about it. And I heard Howard's interview with him, and Stern did a fun job with him, because he just kept asking, and he's your guest, let him talk. So it probably, maybe I should have debated it, maybe I shouldn't have, but most of the feedback from people was, well, 9/11 is a weird thing for people, so they liked that I debated him on it. However people feel about it, and Jesse has a lot of fans, so I get a lot of blowback and a lot of hatred from Jesse Ventura's fans. He's certainly a well-represented guy. I mean, people love him, they respect him, so I still get a lot of hate from that interview, but it was fine.
Okay, before we continue on, got to take care of one more sponsor who also happens to be a close personal friend of mine, Diamond Dallas Page and his DDP Yoga. Dallas has changed thousands of lives with his DDP Yoga program, and I don't just mean the pro wrestlers who love it, like Jake the Snake, RVD, Kane, and Mick Foley. I mean all of the people all over the globe who just want to live a healthier life. And DDP Yoga can do that for you, too. And believe me when I say Dallas has made it real easy for you to get on the program. His new DDP Yoga Now app means you can do DDP Yoga anytime, anywhere. And you can do it right from your phone or your tablet. And the app has a lot more than just the workouts on it. By connecting to a Bluetooth heart rate monitor, you can track your calories and heart rate in real time. You can track your pain, measurements, and progress photos, too, all for free in the app. And like I said, you got tons of workouts to choose from. The original DDP Yoga workouts, the new 2.0 workouts, and weekly live workouts from the DDP Yoga Performance Center. And to make it even easier than he's already made it, for a limited time, you can get the DDP Yoga DVDs for 15% off, plus 3 months of full access to the DDP Yoga Now app. Just go to ddpyoga.com/Austin. That's ddpyoga.com/Austin to take advantage of this great deal. Commit now. Change your life now. Go to ddpyoga.com/Austin to get started. Sam, you're about to jump in with something.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if you know this, but we've only been on the air a month, and we've already had our first walkout interview storm out of the studio.
I saw that.
You did.
I saw it.
You did.
Don't. It was Nancy Grace.
Yes.
What happened?
Yes.
Because I started watching it because I wanted to get ready for you guys. That thing happened so fast.
Yeah.
You know me, Sam. I do my homework.
I always know
didn't
that,
get a chance to do enough homework on you guys. But, yeah, I saw her walk out. I didn't understand what she was getting hot about.
Well, we go like the guest booker, because both Jim and I on our separate shows have spent a lot of time saying unkind things about Nancy Grace on the air.
She blocked me on Twitter. She's like one of the only celebrity that blocked me on Twitter. Or I give her
I'm
a beating.
about to throw this neon clock through the window. I can't believe it. Damn it.
So our guest booker comes up to us one afternoon and he goes, "Would you guys take Nancy Grace on the show?" And Jim and I look at each other like, "Yeah, we would take her. I mean, why would she walk into that
Will
studio?"
She do it?
Like,
yeah.
Like, yes. The answer from us is yes, but there's no way. And he was like, "All right, she's coming in." We were like, "All right, we don't think so." Up until the day, we were going, "There's no way she walks through that door." Up until so we didn't announce it because we didn't want all our listeners on Twitter smartening her up. No. And so she walks in, and immediately, I think with a quote from one of our listeners was, "Hey, idiots, it's not supposed to be bad cop, bad cop." Because we just started hammering her as soon as she walked in on all the stuff that she's done on her TV show, on the stuff she did. I brought up all the wrestling stuff she did that that DDP and the rest of them got so mad about. We brought up all the stuff she's done to exploit the dead kids and everything.
I felt I had to mention it, though, because I beat her up on Twitter, and I'm like, I can't be such a pussy that I'm like, I hate those keyboard. If I said it on Twitter, I wasn't going to be nasty to her in person, but I said, I've had problems with what you've done.
Yeah, you were very frank and very calm about it.
Yeah, I felt I'd be a liar if I didn't and a fake if I didn't. And it's like, what kind of tough guy just tweets at somebody and then when they're in the room with you doesn't at least say, "Hey, look, I've said this stuff."
Right.
Right.
Man, I didn't quite understand it. Did you guys follow the goddamn, what was that? The Stephen Avery case. It wasn't the Stephen Avery
Making
case.
a Murderer.
The
Brendan Dassey.
Brendan Dassey, yes. Brendan Dassey, man. I mean, they set that kid up.
That's exactly what I was thinking about when you were talking about the claustrophobia of jail. Like, when I think about it, I don't even think about the physical claustrophobia, but just like when you talked about that bar, the bar clinging, and you know it's locked, like, you know you're not in control of when it opens back up again. And if you saw that thing on Netflix, listening to that kid say, am I going to get out in time for 7th period because I got a project? And you know that's 15 years ago, however long ago it was. And from that moment, he wanted to get out that afternoon, and he still hasn't gotten out.
Well, they finagle him to saying, you know, if you say this, you can go home.
Yeah.
And then they detained him and said, you know, he said something about going to WrestleMania or some wrestling event.
He did.
In
He said
the
he
next
wanted to
few
watch
weeks.
WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they set this kid up, and man, those dirtbags, what's his name? Lynn? I can't remember his name.
The prosecutor?
Yeah, well, no, not the prosecutor, but the guy.
His attorney.
his
Len,
own attorney.
Len
Kaczynski, Len something.
Wow,
That's that.
good call.
Whatever.
Yeah, Glenn Kaczynski.
The blonde guy, right?
Yeah, I think that.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then to make up that story about well, obviously there's a horrific act on this mattress.
Right.
Where was the mattress? It was always in the house. There wasn't no blood on it.
Right.
So, you know, if it was a made-up story, what the fuck's going on here?
Right.
So now, I guess state of Wisconsin doesn't want to let the kid out. But evidently that lady, the lawyer I'm following on Twitter, who took up that case and got it.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember her name. But anyway, that was the whole clusterfuck.
Yeah, there was like a federal appeals case that said yes, but then still on the state level they said no way.
I don't know what the right thing is either, because you watch the documentary, and then when you hear the prosecutor, because they made the prosecutor seem like the bad guy, and then you hear him interviewed about all the physical evidence that they didn't include in the documentary. Like, there was a lot of Stephen Avery DNA, like his sweat under the hood, like all kinds of shit the documentary left out. And with Dassey, I'm not 100%. I don't know the answer.
Right.
There was something about he had jeans with bleach on them, and there was a big bleach thing where they had cleaned up blood in the thing. It was a bunch of stuff, and I'm not well versed.
A lot of shit that was left out.
Oh yeah, the documentary left out. They made it look like there was one drop of blood. I do think the cops threw the keys down. I do think they planted to get him. But when you look at all
But
the
do you
evidence,
think Stephen Avery, after doing how much time he did for being falsely accused of that first gimmick, would do something to put himself back behind the bars?
I think he did it. I'll tell you why. Here's why I think
Right.
he did. First of all, he threw a live cat into a fire years before. And he was jerking off watching women. He was a bad guy. He had called this woman from a block number a few times because she had come over one time, and the woman who wound up dead, and she thought he was a creep. He answered the door to towel. She didn't want to come back and see him. She didn't like him. So he called her from a block number. He got her back to the property. Then all of a sudden, whenever she's gone, he calls from his number and goes, "Hey, are you coming?" Almost like putting an alibi in. Documentary left all that out. They left a lot of stuff out.
They are doing another set, right?
They should do more
I think
because
they're doing a season 2 or whatever it's going to be called with all the evidence that they said wasn't there.
Well, the blood explanation I read too, and it was like they made it look like that was so ominous. But if you remember, there was really no great follow-up to it. There was a couple of possibilities. And then when you read, like, no, it's very common. That happens all the time with blood samples. And his perspiration was found under the latchkey, under the hood.
Man, it was kind of gimmicky when they found the car. It just had little gimmick branches. That was the worst
Oh,
cover
yeah.
job I'd ever seen in my life.
Right.
If they had access to all the stuff, why wouldn't they crush the car, kayfabed it, and that means hide it,
Sure.
stash it away?
Yeah.
But then again, there never was the bloody mattress where this was allegedly supposed to have happened.
I
Yeah.
definitely.
I subscribe to the theory that it was committed off premise,
Yeah.
brought back over. I don't know if someone did.
It may have
But-
been.
But then again, I mean, he stood to gain. What was the payoff that he was going to get from
Yeah.
the first thing?
Yeah.
It was in the high millions of dollars, and all of a sudden, boom, the girl's
No
dead.
more.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to disrespect the woman who was killed. I just
Sure.
can't remember her name.
But the Dassey story too. I mean,
Yeah.
you watch that thing and you see
That kid
they
was
were
set up
tricking
like a
him
bastard.
into
Yeah.
confessing
Yeah.
and having him sign things and doing all this stuff. He didn't know what was going
The
on.
prosecutor, I want to interview the prosecutor because when you hear him talk, he knew he was painted as the bad guy, and he's more than willing to come out and say everything they left out. He's
But
like,
he's a scumbag, though. I mean, he's got charges against him.
Nah,
He's
the
got-
charges. He was a jerk off. He was texting dirty to some.
Yeah.
Fair enough, but all that. But just because you're shitty and you're a pervert doesn't mean that this guy. Because they found her cell phone, they found found all this weird stuff in the fire pit. I think the documentary left out. There's a lot more evidence found, physical evidence, than the documentary mentioned. And I was like, why would you guys? It's a fascinating story no matter what it is. It's amazing. This guy went to prison. He never should have went to prison. Even if he did kill the girl, fascinating. If he didn't kill the girl, fascinating. They didn't need to leave any evidence out.
Maybe they didn't have enough time to cover it in their 12 hours
Jesus,
or however long it was.
I know, literally, they were showing flights in real time. They didn't need to do that. So it's a fascinating story either way.
So what brings you guys out to Los Angeles?
Well, we're doing the morning show out here from the SiriusXM studios.
Well, tell us the time of the morning show so that the people that listen to my show will know when and where the morning show is on.
8 to 11?
8 a.m. Eastern, yeah. 8 to 11.
I said 8 to 11. I don't even know how to plug my own show. I really stink. I'm an ass.
Yeah, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern on XM 103, Sirius 206, and it replays a couple times during the day. And, yeah, it's Monday through Friday. So we're doing
tell me
it.
about the creative process for you. I just got finished. It was a few months ago. I had Bill Burr on the show.
Oh, we saw Bill today.
Yeah, we did the show
great.
this morning. Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I went and saw him at the comedy club over at Hermosa Beach. I thought my head was going to explode. Me and my wife were laughing so goddamn hard.
It's
so
amazing.
And you know the thing about it was, just like you, all of a sudden you get backstage with him, or like when he showed up on a podcast, I just thought he was going to riff, and he'd like kind of like go off.
Yeah.
No, he's just a regular human being.
Yeah.
But boy, when he hits the stage, whole different thing. So what's the story about you trying to create new content, or how do you go about the process and fleshing out a joke, or going through the process of, hey, this is some good shit here?
Sometimes I'll write stuff down. Other times I'm at the Comedy Cellar most nights. I'll just go on and go like, man, the Trump-Hillary stuff. And it's a weird, it's almost like you can feel it, like it's like a smell. Like when there's a smell in the room, you can't identify it's there, but you can't pinpoint. Like that's how I am with thoughts for jokes. So I'll just kind of go on stage and just start talking about something and then see where it goes. I let myself do that to keep it very natural. I think radio trains you for that because you're so used to it being off the cuff every day. And then it starts to formulate into a joke. It's really fun, though, when all of a sudden you click and you know you're being funny and you're hitting.
And you're just kind of riffing.
Yeah, and then it becomes a bit. And then, okay, boom, that goes in the act. Boom.
Right.
You just keep building and pushing the old shit out the back door. It's like squeezing someone's head and they're just shitting. That's the way my act is. You're just squeezing all the old
So
stuff out.
how do you separate, like you've written, what, 2 books? Or working on a third?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I started writing within the last few months. I wanted to do a 3rd book, but I did specials in the last few years, so all my writing was going into stand-up. But
So that's my question. I mean, like what's the difference between writing a book, because are these like halfway, autobiographical?
Oh, yeah, very.
Okay.
Talked a lot about hookers and a lot of stuff in my first book especially.
And so that's just a completely different gig from, boom, it's for the routine.
Yeah, no, it's weird. It was like blogging in a way because we were off the radio when I wrote that first one, so I couldn't get it out. I couldn't talk about it, so I had to write it. And I wrote a little bit recently, and it felt so good to do. But I have to write in the moment when I'm feeling something. I can't go back and recapture very well. So if you're feeling something, like I'll talk it into Siri, unless he's around, because Sam's a piece of shit. Whenever you're talking into Siri, he says things and he ruins it. So you have to just you have to actually physically type when you're around Sam. But I would talk it out, and I'll talk out a lot of stuff. And what I've written recently in the last couple of years, I've written some stuff for Time.com. So that was more serious stuff or opinion stuff on the language policing. To write funny stuff, I want to do in my book. I want it to be fucking funny.
So did you go to college?
No, I'm a high school dropout.
And you were a sociology major?
Yeah, in Syracuse.
God damn it. So where comes this need to create?
I think it's just probably self-hatred. I don't want to look at it's either that or the mirror.
But
So
you always hear me being, a wannabe comedian, or just a guy that is and really looks up to stand-up comedians who can make me laugh or whatever. A big Mitch Hedberg fan.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But you hear a lot of times that sometimes comedians are kind of miserable people.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Chris Rock had a good quote about it. Chris is such a smart guy, and he was talking about comedians being unhappy. He goes, they say ignorance is bliss. He said comedians notice everything, and that's why we're miserable, because we look for everything. You look for every wrong thing, every wrong innuendo, and you notice it, and you make a mental note, so it's hard to feel good when you can't not see things. And I don't think it's a smart thing. I think it's just the way our brains focus on things. But a lot of comics are miserable, yeah, because this conflict is funny. Like conflict, like look at the great sitcoms. What happy marriages, married with children, all in the family. It was always shut up. That was funny. You know what I mean? Eat them like any other elephant. You didn't want to see Ralph and Alice get along. You wanted conflict.
Right.
So conflict is funny, and that's kind of what comics focus on, is conflict. I think that's what makes it funny to me.
Does your comedian background help you with the interview process?
You know, I mean, I think a little bit because I'm
comfortable. Are you yes and? Are you groundlings? Are you just?
Oh no! I mean, like an improver?
Yeah, I mean, or just with respect to having a conversation.
I think so. Yeah, because I'm comfortable. I don't feel pressure to be funny. I'm comfortable just chatting. I know something funny might come out. It's okay if it does. It's okay if it doesn't.
How are you with hecklers during your set?
I don't mind them as long as I hate when they step on a line. Like I don't care what they yell, but when they're like when there's a pause. And they yell something because they just want. We love you. We talked about this with Bill.
Yeah,
you're great. Or, you know, it's very rarely nasty.
Yeah, but you fucked up my joke.
Yeah, dude, your timing.
Yeah, God damn it.
But you guys get the hecklers. I remember one of the first wrestling matches I went to see. I saw Sergeant Slaughter wrestle somebody, you know, and I forget who he wrestled, but it was like in a high school gym, and I hated him so much. And I didn't have the courage to say anything to him, but he's walking through and people are screaming at him, and I'm like, the shit you guys got to put up with is a lot worse than comics do. I mean, you get people really angry at you.
Well, that was back in the old days, you know, when you get like shooting heat, like real heat, and people are just like, well, the business hadn't been exposed as many times as it had been. Even when Stossel and, you know, Raul Rivera did his thing or whatever, you could get heat. These days, Sam, talk to me about, because you're knowledgeable enough, even though you're a young cat, you know of the stories. You talked to so many guys who had shooting heat, who got stabbed, cut, gashed open, versus trying to get heat. Now, how much heat can a heel get these days to the way the business is structured?
I don't think it really can. Like the only real heat that exists, it comes from good guys who are being forced. Like Roman Reigns gets more heat than anybody, and he's a good guy. You know, I think that the fans have all become so smart, or their interpretation of smart. You know what I mean? Like they consider themselves all so smart that anyone who's great at being a bad guy is going to get cheered, whereas before, even when you were going, right, it would be this slow, natural progression. Like Stone Cold was a real bad guy, and then over time, people just appreciated him enough. Now, I mean, if you're really good at being a bad guy, it takes you 2 weeks, and everybody's cheering for you. Like Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho, they can't do the show properly, especially Jericho, because all that happens is everybody cheers for Jericho and his catchphrases and everything, and he's supposed to be this ultimate weasel villain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't think that era...
It's harder.
Yeah, it's way harder, and there was this kind of romantic era of, like you said, guys literally would start riots, and they'd have to get snuck back into the dressing room and stay there for hours, because otherwise there was going to be real violence.
But you know, I think the wrestling fans are, I love them, and they can do whatever they want to. But now I think what they do is they're watching the show, they're watching the guys and the gals go through their paces, their storylines, their angles. But they're more so, you know, because they're so smart, they're judging the writing.
That's exactly right.
So the writing's getting the heat rather than the talent getting the heat. When, you know, I'm not going to walk out of a Tom Cruise movie going, God damn, those fucking writers really fucked me. No, they made Tom Cruise is badass in that fucking movie.
Right.
You know, but here they want to say, the writers are doing this, or they got to push Roman, they got to push Roman. Just watch it happen. Forget about the writing. Just go back into suspending your disbelief.
I went to one of the pay-per-view where they did Chris Jericho and Dean Ambrose in the cage a few months back. Yeah. I went to that pay-per-view with a Hollywood writer who didn't know anything about wrestling but was working on a wrestling-related project, so he wanted to be familiarized. I was like, come with me. I'll show you the whole show and explain everything as it goes. And that's what blew his mind, that I was trying to explain. He's like, well, why are they booing that guy? I go, they're not booing that guy. They're booing what they think the creative team that they're all aware of is making that guy do. They might like that guy, but they don't like that guy reading those lines because they think that guy should be reading the lines that they want him to read.
Are they playing along in a way by booing the guy? If the creative team wants him booed, or they're booing against the creative team.
They're booing against the creative team.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then it seems like, from a fan's perspective anyway, that then the creative team or whoever's in charge over there, whatever, sticks their heels in the sand and just goes, no, we're going to do it my way. And then the fans go, no, you're going to do it our way. And whereas there was a time where they'd kind of bend a little bit and go the fans' direction, but then grab the fans once they had him and said, okay, now you're going in our direction. Now it's just two opposing forces.
Would you get booed when you were a heel? Would you get booed?
Oh yeah, when I first came in, long story short, I wrestled for about 7.5 years, and then in Atlanta, started off in Dallas and went through Tennessee, and then I had an injury in Japan. I fucked up my arm. I got fired, so I worked for about a few months with Paul Heyman in ECW, and that's when Vince called me, and he pitched me this gimmick. They were going to call me the Ringmaster, the Master of the Ring. Ted DiBiase was going to be my manager, so it was a bad idea, but it was a foot in the door.
And that's the way you saw it even at the time, right?
Yeah. So I knew it was a pile of shit gimmick, but okay, now they actually are pursuing me, so I'll go. Before they'd never pursued me, just saw me as a mechanic, and so I just said, hey, I'm not going to go there. And that's when I came up with the Stone Cold Steve Austin thing. But when I first started the Stone Cold Steve Austin thing, I came up with a name, came up with being from Victoria, Texas, where I used to live. But then you remember my debut stuff. I mean, I was laying my shit in. You couldn't see through anything. And I was talking so much shit, you just couldn't deny it.
And there'd be no play into the audience either.
No.
No play into the audience.
It was straight up. If this table were podcasting from is square, just like a ring, all I'm paying attention to is me and you, and here's a referee, Sam, but I'm not trying to get a look or go to the crowd or, get a fucking response from them. I'm getting my response here.
Not even
by beating somebody's ass.
And it was great because it wasn't even like the bad guy thing. It wasn't even like you beat up the good guy and say, hey, how do you all like... No,
that's pandering.
Right.
You're every time you do something, it's a lot like stand-up. It's like I was talking to Bill Burr about a few months ago. The gigs are so similar because you throw out a joke or put out a line or whatever you want to call it. You do something in the ring to elicit a response. Based on the response, you proceed accordingly. And normally, back in the old days, you're making these decisions on the fly. Some of it's mapped out already, like a routine maybe. But all of a sudden, you lose them. Okay, let me go here because they're not buying this. And so you shift gears in the ring. So you're always listening. But yes, to answer your question, people were booing the shit out of me. But then all of a sudden, I started getting kind of cool. And I was still vicious, and I was talking so much shit. And that's when Vince took the filters off. And Brian Pillman had just came to WWF, and I'd be working with guys, and I was the heel, and I was getting cheered more than the babyface was when we went out to the match. And as soon as I walked back through the curtains, there was Brian Pillman. God damn it, kid, you're a babyface. And you take being a heel or a babyface, a bad guy and a good guy, very seriously in that business because you're trying to be either or, not both. And I said, fuck you. So I'm a heel. Well, I was turning. So organically, I don't want to talk about my story too many times because people have heard it so many times, but we did a transition match at WrestleMania 13 many years ago, myself and the one and only Bret the Hitman Hart, in which I entered that match as kind of a guy that was still a heel, but people were starting to like me. He had been around for so long, and he was a legend, but he was kind of pissing and moaning a little bit. So they were kind of turning on him a little bit, although he was still the overwhelming fan favorite. I went to the ring first after Ken Shamrock was a special referee. That was a great attraction. Ken was wonderful in his role. And then I'm out there, and I get a pretty positive reaction, but some boos. And then here comes Bret, almost all cheers. And over the course of 20, 25 minutes, passing out in a pool of blood. And then, Ken challenges Bret Hart to a let's go. And Bret backs down. And that kind of further cemented Bret's heel direction. So we had work to do on the backside of television to get us both in the roles. And it wasn't like they automatically said, okay, Steve, just because people are cheering you now, you are a babyface. We never said I was a babyface. Jim Ross was smart enough to give me backhanded compliments, or I don't know why they like him, but also they just transitioned my opponents. I started working with heels rather than babies.
Right.
And so that's how that worked. But along the way, I became just a cemented hardcore babyface. But in the formative years, I was a heel getting heat.
He was also, and not to blow smoke, but he was also such like a change from what was going on. Like you would have loved like the old promos because they went from like Hogan, very cartoony, very sort of family friendly, to like Steve jumping on a microphone, and when he's like challenging Bret Hart, he just jumps on and he goes, he's Bret the Hitman Hart, and he goes, if you put an S in front of the word Hitman, you've got exactly what I think of Bret Hart. And nobody's heard anything like this before on wrestling.
But I mean, it's kind of like, if you look, Look at kind of what stand-up has gone through. I mean, you had guys, your Lenny Bruce's, guys that are early guys like that. But when guys like, God dang, I just had his name on the tip of my tongue, Sam Kinison came along.
Right.
All of a sudden, you've got all this standard fair delivery, and all of a sudden, he's yelling, he's angry. Well, he's a former priest or
Preacher,
reverend.
yeah.
I mean, that guy was dynamite. But it was just different. It was a different presentation to me. I guess mine was just a different presentation, but mine was serious, hardcore, straight up. Hey, man, this is real. The fight you and me are about to have is real. So, and that's the game we were playing.
Yeah.
The presentation has just changed over the last few years.
I think Rodney told Sam to do that. Like, he was doing his yelling, but I think he would do it as part of his act. And Dangerfield, when he did the special, goes, no, do that.
Really?
Open with that. Like, be that guy. I think he actually convinced him, like, doing Dice was just a part of his show.
Right.
He was Andy Clay. He would do all these impressions and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And there was like, no, just be Dice.
And then it becomes revolutionary.
What happened with Dice when he kind of started playing to the women? Because that's when things didn't go so good for him. And then he made his comeback. What did that do to him? Because you know him real well, right?
Yes.
Did that just take him to a psychological low?
I think he was just, I think a couple things. One, the feminists sunk him. Like,
Right.
don't forget, when political correctness, and Colin Quinn pointed out, they should have been going after rap a lot harder. Like, they went after it, but a lot of that was focused on Andrew. So the feminists ruined a 3-picture deal. He had done Ford Fairlane. My Cousin Vinny was written for him, and they gave it to Joe Pesci because they just paid Dice off. They're like, fuck you. When he was getting the death threats for the gay jokes. So I think that he just went into a different direction just to comedically explore it. I'm guessing he got a little bored. And Andrew's a goofball. Like, he loves he would go on stage sometimes and just see, like in a club, and see how long he could talk without getting a laugh. Just to do it.
Just as a goof?
Just to fuck around. Yeah, or he likes to fuck with people. So I think that he was just trying something different.
But Andy Kaufman was like that.
Yes,
He'd
he
go out
was.
there and just do shit that was so random or off the wall, and people are like, what are you fucking doing?
Yeah.
And then out comes the genius of Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, and I think Dice would do stuff like that. But I think that it was probably less fulfilling for him because it didn't feel as honest for him.
Right.
But like any comic, he dipped down, but his acting is so good. And then he's come back up with Blue Jasmine, was fucking amazing. Dice is a really good actor, and he's
and the Showtime series is great.
the Showtime, and he was great in Vinyl. Did you see Vinyl?
No.
He was in 2
Yeah.
episodes of that.
Yeah.
Oh, he was fucking phenomenal in that.
All right, y'all know the reason I get to do this show for you for free every week is because of all the great sponsors. So thanks to the sponsors, and thanks to you guys for supporting them. And here's one that's going to help you get a good night's sleep that you deserve. Bowl and Branch. You think it's enough just to have a comfortable mattress? It's not. You need comfortable, soft bedding to ensure you make the most of your comfy mattress. And thanks to Bowl and Branch, you can sleep on some serious, luxurious sheets for a fraction of the cost. Bowl and Branch bedding and blankets are made from 100% pure organic cotton, which makes them really soft. And when you buy directly from Bowl and Branch, you're basically paying wholesale prices. I've seen the prices of luxury sheets. They cost you up to $1,000 in the store. But with Bowl and Branch, you can get luxury sheets delivered right to your front door for just a couple $100. And people love these sheets. Bowl and Branch has thousands of 5-star reviews. Even 3 U.S. presidents sleep on Bowl and Branch sheets. And here's the best part. You can try them for 30 nights, and if you don't love them, you can send them back for a refund. And to get you started, Bowl and Branch is giving you $50 off your first set of sheets when you order at bowlandbranch.com and use the promo code Steve. That's bowlandbranch.com and use the promo code Steve to get $50 off your first set of sheets and free shipping. So order now, bowlandbranch.com, and use the promo code Steve. 2 questions. Who influenced you, and who do you like now?
Growing up, it was Carlin and Pryor and Robert Klein. I think Robert Klein's very underrated. Right now, I love watching Colin Quinn, Dave Attell, Chris Rock. Those guys are just great. I think my favorite comic to watch is Colin Quinn. I don't know if you've ever seen Colin do stand-up.
Well, I love his voice.
Yeah, fucking, he just kind of blathers through things. Fucking, you pick up half of it, but he's really brilliant,
Right.
and he's the best at dissecting human relationships. Patrice O'Neill was great at that, but Colin, we all agree, was the best at dissecting human interaction. He was really great at it, so he's my favorite.
Did you ever get into Mitch Hedberg? Because that guy was so, I don't want to say if random is the right word, because I want to put him over, but just his delivery, his cadence.
Yes.
You know, everybody talks a little bit different.
Sure.
And just the way they rope in a crowd, like Carlin, a mastermind, him and Pryor, two of my all-time favorites. Hell, Eddie Murphy back when he was doing stand-up.
Amazing.
But just the way Mitch would phrase the way he delivered a joke.
Yeah. Mitch was very unique in that, and he's a guy that you see a lot of guys doing. Like guys like him, Dave Attell. Like Dave Attell goes, okay, and there's an Attell cadence. Mitch, yeah, you know, that whole laid back thing, or the way he would phrase. People do that now, and you're like, that's a guy who liked Mitch. Mitch was very unique, and he was not praised as a tremendous hero a lot of times. It took him a long time. The Comedy Central tour with Attell and Louis Black he did really helped him. Mitch was so funny, and he's a guy who influenced a lot of comedians. A lot of guys.
What was it like the first time you got up on stage, and when did you decide? I mean, were you funny as a kid?
The only thing I ever did well. It was the only reason girls didn't spit on me when I walked by, so I could make them laugh. The only thing that kept me getting beat up by big guys was that I could embarrass them. Like I couldn't fight with them, but they knew that I could make them laugh and I could make them look stupid. In high school, that's everybody's greatest fear is being. So they would leave me alone. So in 1990, I wanted to try it. I was 21. I was dropped out of high school. It was all I ever wanted to do. It was fucking weird. Hearing your voice over a mic was weird. I was terrible. I was dirty. So that was what got to me was how I wasn't being funny to people. They didn't think I was very funny the first time I was on stage. I stunk.
Yeah, I know, but it takes a lot of guts to do that. So you kept going back. You got your chops up.
Yeah, I don't know why. I used to root for shows to get canceled. I'd go back and I'd be like, I hope that no one shows up so I don't have to do this tonight.
Dude, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there. Like, maybe they'll send the wrong ropes like they did in Phoenix one time. We won't have to work.
Oh, isn't that great? Yeah.
Yeah, true story. They sent the wrong ropes. We didn't work. It's like, oh, okay. Because right when, like I told Bill Burr, right when you think you're getting the hang of things, you know, maybe you're in the business a couple of years. Hey, man, I got a pretty good routine, or I'm a pretty good worker, and all of a sudden you go out there and you shit the bed, and then all of a sudden you have like a week's worth of shitty matches. Like, I thought I was getting this.
Yeah.
And it turns out maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Oh, it's the worst. When I'm up there, and even today I'll have my nights where I feel like I'm just a stiff little fucking fruity robot boy saying nothing funny. Nothing's coming out funny. Nothing's coming out smooth. I'm like, you're a fucking fraud, and they can all see it. Oh, it's the inner dialogue you have when you're on stage. There's so many times I'm just talking to myself as I'm talking to them.
But are you spinning up when, I mean, like I said, when I was talking to Bill Burr, and he made me laugh my head off. My wife and I go backstage, and he's back to the Bill Burr that was on the podcast.
Sure.
It's a normal, rational, very smart human being. But he hits that stage, man, and it's almost like he would be like if it was Stone Cold Bill Burr, he's Stone Cold out there, and then when he goes back, it's the same thing in the dressing room. I go back to being Steve Austin.
Sure.
Are you a different creature once the light goes on and you've got a mic?
A bit more, you know, it's focused on you a little bit more. You're more like it's an exaggerated version of yourself. But I'm not that much different. I mean, I'm telling the truth about a lot of things I do and have done. So it's a bit more of a high energy of me and more of a focused on only trying to say funny things or make to a funny point. But no, it's not that much different.
Where do you draw the line on how crude can you go?
You're asking the wrong guy, Steve.
Well, I always say this: if "cunt" is the first word of the joke, it can't be the last. It's either or. There's no line. You're on TV, you don't curse. If I'm on terrestrial radio, if this podcast was clean, I wouldn't curse. I know where I can't curse.
Right.
But there's no subject I won't make fun of as long as I think I have a good joke, no matter how tragic. Because if you start getting into, I can't joke about that, there's just too many things that I wouldn't make fun of.
Right.
So I would rather go down swinging and offend somebody than leave out a tremendous amount of subjects that people need to laugh about because they're sad.
What's the atmosphere back in the comedy club when a bunch of guys just kind of having a reunion, a couple of you going to perform, but other guys just coming to check out the gig? Is it all cool? Are y'all trying out material on each other?
No.
Check this out? Oh, really?
No.
You don't want to give anybody any 411?
No. But if you try out material, if you do a bit in conversation, the guys in New York, Colin, Keith, and when Patrice was around, it was humiliating. It was like they would call you out. Is that a fucking bit? I'm not an audience member. I'm not some fucking college student picking you up at the airport, you shithead. Oh yeah, you will learn fast. If you're funny organically and conversationally, if you're teasing each other.
Yeah.
But if you come to the table where we're hanging and you're doing a bit, you're gonna get slaughtered for it.
So that's jabroni. You don't do that.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Or on Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, it was one of the things was that applause generating stuff. stuff. Like you don't like if you're sitting there and you're on and you would say something like, because I just believe that America is the greatest country, and you look at the audience and they clap, the fucking comedians would pounce on you. You phony, shut up. But it keeps you honest, and it keeps you from going down a lot of embarrassing roads. It's really cleansing.
Would you ever do that when you guys could do your own promos and everything? Would you try promos out in front of other guys in the locker room? Or would it be
right.
it'd be the same thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. To answer your question, no, I wouldn't cut a promo on somebody. Now, I have asked opinions from guys, or guys have asked, opinions of mine on something, because sometimes, if you're an elder statesman or a guy who's been around the horn or at a high level, asking someone's 411 ain't a bad thing.
Right, of course.
I mean, as long as you've been in radio, I'm sure if you came across some people that you look up to, I mean, I don't think it's a basic elementary question that you would ask them, but I mean, just a conversation kind of, I don't know, enlightens you to a degree.
Definitely. Just being around people like that is going to be enlightening the more you can do it. But yeah, you just go and you watch and you look for the nuances, and then you ask about the nuances. That's where you really start to learn sort of technique and the little things that go into making it really good.
Nobody minds either. I think if you ask somebody to ask you for advice, like, what do you think about this or that? People like to have their opinion valued, as long as you're not some, fucking draining sponge who's always asking. But if someone comes up and asks you, what do you think about this thing or whatever, most guys are happy to give you an opinion. The
worst is when somebody asks you for advice, and then you give it to them, and then they just go about their business, and you go, well, don't ask me again then.
Yeah.
What about the time, Jim, when somebody goes out there on the stage and just completely shits the bed, and it ain't funny, they ain't got a funny bone in the body, and they say, how'd I do?
It's, it depends on your relationship with them. You stunk is really fun, but usually if I'm gentler with people I don't know, because
what if one of your friends does really poorly on stage?
There's nothing like this. There's times at the Comedy Cellar, if one comedian's bombing and you hear one person in the room laughing, it's probably the guy who's on next. Because I love watching my friends bomb.
Really?
I don't want to see them bomb on TV. I don't.
Right.
That's not even true. I don't want to see them bomb in a place that's really going to hurt them, because I love these guys. But when you're at the Comedy Cellar and you see one of your friends eating his dick, it's so great. And what you want is, because the Comedy Cellar door, the stage is facing you, what you like sit there and look, because you want them to know you're watching them bomb.
I'm watching you, and you're shitting the bed.
You make faces.
You're thinking, your buddy's probably out there thinking, man, what, a bunch of deaf mutes? This is good shit. Why aren't they laughing? Something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong. When people would ask me, hey, man, what do you think about that match? And, my normal thing to them was, kid, take 2 weeks off and quit the business. So, you got my permission to use that one little
That's
thing
very
from
funny.
Steve Austin. And some of them will actually act like, well, why do I want to take the 2 weeks off? It's a fucking rib. You're the shits. You're going to learn. Just give it time. I'm fucking with you.
Yeah, sometimes if it's a new comedian, I don't like to bully a new guy because I feel bad, because they're a little more likely to run out the door. And it's like, I feel for those guys, but a guy who's been around for a while, I'm much more comfortable making fun of someone who's cool with that.
But sometimes, I mean, as funny as anybody is, or as good as or as over as I could be back in the day, man, sometimes you roll into a town, people ain't buying shit. And you're like, I don't know why they bought a ticket, because they don't give a fuck what's going on in the ring. And so sometimes you just have a crowd that they came to see you, or they're there.
Yeah.
But they really ain't appreciating the show.
As long as they're not heckling.
When was the last time you really bombed?
I'm at the Comedy Cellar because they're not my fans. I'm just going to perform. Like, they don't know I'm going to be there. So, I don't usually bomb in front of my own audiences at all. Because they're, like Bill said, they paid a ticket. They're in for the ride.
Yeah.
They're okay with that. They know I'm going to talk about X, Y, and Z, and they're fine with it. But at the Cellar, I've had a lot of stuff bomb. A lot of jokes go down the toilet. I did a cancer benefit last year that I almost bombed on. Like, I started off in the toilet. I'm like, oh, no. I tried a joke that was either going to kill or really make me a hero, or it did not work at all. It got like a out of the crowd. I was like, oh, no. I'm going to make these guys feel worse. So I wound up salvaging the set. But I had a lot of moments like that where I feel like after 26 years, you start to learn how to salvage the moments.
Right.
Like, for me, it's like if a set's going poorly and it's not getting big laughs, I'm like, okay, this is a personality workout. So what you do is slow down, fucking pause, sit in it, motherfucker. I'll tell myself that on stage. Just feel that silence, and then the next time it happens in front of 1,000 people, you know how to work with. You know what I mean? It's like I'm going to use this like the gym. So just take that pause and take that fucking silence, and don't panic. Don't run through it. Just eat it for a second and act like it's supposed to be this way. If it's quiet and you're acting like this is exactly the response I'm expecting, half the times they think that you know what you're doing.
Never let them see you sweat.
Never let them see you sweat. But don't start. I've also had plenty of times where they saw me sweat, and I just shit the bed, and it's ugly. Like when you can't close strong, there's nothing worse than when you have the red light, and you're like the two bits you're trying at the end are just bombing, and I'll just walk off and go, all right, thank you very much, and there's like a tentative applause, like they're clapping workers, like, oh, thank God that's done, and it's humiliating, and you've been defeated.
So y'all are back to the studio tomorrow for y'all's show, right?
Yeah, we're going back tomorrow morning.
And we fly home Sunday morning, and then right back next week. And I actually took off next week because I'm going to UFC 205. So I mean,
man, that's gonna be awesome at the Garden.
Oh, it's gonna be great.
The Garden is not the biggest building in the world, but goddamn, it's just a magical building because it's the Garden.
Sure.
And that's a rocking card too.
I think it's the best card they've ever put together.
Yeah.
I think it's really from top to bottom, it's amazing. I mean, the fact that Weidman is fighting, Cowboy is fighting, obviously Eddie Alvarez is fighting, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who I love, it's fucking Wonder Boy. It's such a great card.
Golly, hey, here's a quick question for you. Life on the road for Jim Norton at 48 years of age. Man, are you boozing it? Are you straight edge? I mean,
I don't get high or drink at all. So it's mostly just me looking at back page on my computer, trying to find maybe an escort or a massage, or just talk to somebody, even if I'm not hooking up. A lot of texting, a lot of dirty texting. That's what most of my road time is. It's just spent talking, trying to get girls over or whatever. It really is exhausting. Not much of substance happening in my room. I go to the gym and I just sit
What
in the
about
room.
nutritional values? Because I know a little bit about Sam Roberts' diet, and this guy loves hamburgers, cheeseburgers, fried chicken.
Yeah.
You still owe me a cheat day.
I do owe you a cheat day. What's your dietary restrictions? Anything and everything?
I eat healthy. I eat like grilled chicken, steamed vegetables. Yeah, because I'm so paranoid about getting fatty again. I was a fucking fatty for a while, so I'm so scared of going back to that I try to eat healthy. I eat fruit. I don't eat a lot of junk.
You go run, do anything kind of cardio?
I exercise, but I have sleep apnea, so my cardio stinks.
Okay, question. Sleep apnea. I got that shit too. I wear a mask and got the CPAP machine. You?
I have an ASV machine because I have two types of apnea. I have the throat one and the brain one.
Right.
So I can't get used to it. Does it help you? Do you feel more rested?
Oh, dude, it's a game changer.
It is.
See, here's the thing. Like my face, I don't know, it's shaped kind of different. So it's hard when you put that mask on, and I'm a mouth breather because my nose has been broken so many times, deviated septum. It's a real pain in the neck. Sometimes, one side of work, it'll switch out.
I get that a lot, yeah.
I'm a mouth breather, so I can't use one of those ones on your nose that's a full face. And so you put that thing on, and when I first got the CPAP machine, and I was happy to share this story because there's too many guys out there that got sleep apnea and need to get a checkup, get a sleep study done. When I was breathing out, the machine's blowing in. And so if it's blowing in at 12 CSI, 12 centimeters a square inch, or whatever the gimmick is, it's not like a PSI for a tire. If it's blowing in and I'm breathing out about the same, the pressures meet and it pushes the mask away from my face, so the air shoots into your eyes.
Yeah,
It ain't worth the fuck.
Right.
So the machine I got now, when I breathe out, it stops blowing in. And then when I inhale, it starts blowing again. So you don't get that discombobulation with the mask. You don't have to strap the motherfucker on so tight you got these big streaks on your face. So that's a game changer.
Is that an APAP what you have?
I'll show you exactly what it is. I don't know if it's called a BiPAP or whatever.
A BiPAP, yeah, that might be it. Yes, yeah.
But that's what you need, because if you got sleep apnea, I mean, it will make you feel light years better. It's a game changer.
And you feel like, when that feeling you get when you wake up, like I feel stoned all the time. Like I'm lightheaded. There's times I feel like I'm going to pass out when I'm walking, and it's all because I'm not sleeping, but I'm always fucking tired, always.
You gotta get the machine I got.
It's the mask. I'm a little claustrophobic. I'm amazed you can do that being claustrophobic. That's impressive.
Here's the thing. I just knew that I needed to do it, and I kept thinking there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. No, there's just a better machine. And all those machines are about $600 to $1,000. That's just the price range. So if that's an arm and a leg for somebody or whatever, that's the price for a goddamn good machine that's going to last you. Fuck, I've had these machines now for I don't know how many years, and so I just don't sleep without them.
You don't?
Nah, fuck no, man. I mean, look, it was that, Reggie White died of that. I think there's some other complications. Reggie, big, tough, strong, badass guy. So I think it's a little bit more than sleep apnea. But I mean, that was a contributing factor.
How long did it take you to get used to the mask?
The old one, I never could get used to it, and I couldn't sleep. And so that's when I found out the BiPAP. And after that, it was really a couple of month adjustment. And you got to commit to it because, well, you got to understand, if you put yourself through a sleep study, you want to get better. If I go to a doctor and there's something wrong with me and I need to get a procedure done or take medication, I've got to do that. So the prescription for my sleep apnea, unless I want to get my deviated septums fixed by, sticking that rod up there, breaking the fuck out of my nose and getting it straight and all that other bullshit, or if it's the one in your throat gimmick to get that thing trimmed up, that's not my problem. You're going to fix the problem. And so since I don't want my nose fucked with, I'm a mouth breather. I use a CPAP machine. That's my prescription. That's my medication.
How do you not run out of air? How do you not run out of air? Like, I'm amazed with guys that are mouth breathers because just talking a lot on stage, sometimes I would feel like, oh my God, you're going to pass out because you're not breathing.
You got to get a CPAP machine.
Yeah, the one I have is the right one.
You're doing your podcast with Matt Serra, going back to mouth breathers. Just being a fighter, man. If I had to be a shoot fighter like UFC fighters, they keep their mouth closed for a reason. If you got an open mouth, it's easier to get knocked out. Correct?
Yeah.
And so they're always breathing through their nose. And I also think there's some other issues going along with that as well, but. Shit, I'd have my mouth open all the time because I can't fucking breathe.
Yeah.
I'm never at a loss for a breath, but half the time I'm breathing through my damn mouth.
I just can't fall asleep with it. That's the problem. I cannot fall asleep with it. It's psychological.
Dude, it might take some Ambien. It might take something else. But if you start getting, I'm going to get you on some drugs over here. Shit. But,
I took a half an Ambien, and I don't take any drugs. For my third sleep study, I went to 3.
Yeah.
I took a half of one. I think I took one the first time, too, just to help me fall asleep because I know they needed results.
Yeah, to get the reading.
They had to get the readings. And I'm like, this is a medical thing. And it didn't make me high. I just fell asleep, and that was it.
Right.
But I would love to get propofol you have to be constantly have pumped into you. But I would love to take propofol.
No, you don't want to do that.
No, I can't. I'm remembering you need someone to administer that.
But so what about the Ambien? I mean, a half one a night ain't no.
I'm an addicted person, though.
Gotcha.
Fast forward 6 months, it'll be 4 a night, tweaking my nipples on the phone. It'll be really bad. I'm bad. I'm a bad boy. I just can't do it. I can't do it.
But that's the thing, going through, in my career in professional wrestling. The other day I was talking to Kurt Angle, and he was talking about all the shit that he was taking. I just never went to that level. I don't really have an addictive personality. I like my alcohol. When I was on the road, I was drinking pretty much. But, just left to your own devices. If boom, that that 0.5 or that half is going to help you get some quality sleep. I mean, something to consider.
You had it happen to you when you were wrestling, too? Like, how would you do it being that tired?
Oh, man, it didn't really hit me. You got to understand, I quit 12 years ago. When I retired, I was 38. God damn, I was a fucking baby. Man, there was so much money on the table, so many angles still to shoot, so many different matches to have, but that's when I needed to get out of the ring. So I wasn't tired back then because when you're 38, I mean, you might as well be 28. Dude.
Yeah.
That's when you're bulletproof. I mean, you can go all night, whatever it is, whether it's wrestling, 25-minute match, go out there and you hit the bars, you're partying all night, you go to the gym early in the morning, you go get to the next town, get your ass in the ring. I mean, it's just a cycle. But you're a fucking psycho when you're that age, man. I mean, just from a standpoint of human performance.
So you go to the gym every day?
Yeah, I mean, but you look at guys these days who are starting to fall off. I mean, like Manning, that last year, they won a Super Bowl, but I mean, boy, he was really falling apart there. He had some nerve problems with his neck, but I mean, physical performance kind of starts slowing down, but you're still a young cat. You try to do the same schedule at 51, forget about it.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Jump in here, Sam. Let's don't talk about sleep. Let's wrap this motherfucker up.
Well, all right. Look, I know you get asked about it all the time, but I want to ask in the context of Goldberg. You see a guy, because it just jarred me a little bit, because I guess I knew, but just like really putting into context the fact that you're 38. See, I'm 33 now, so maybe when I'm 15, if you retire at 38, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But at 33, when I'm hearing that you were 38 at the time you retired, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you see that a Goldberg, a Sting, these guys can come back, do their 1 or 2 matches, they all seem like they're having a good time doing it. Does that put the bug in your head at all? Maybe I should do that 1-match run?
No.
You're out.
No, man.
Good for you.
I can't.
Good for
my
you.
Chips, man. Wade Keller asked me the same thing. I said, man, there ain't no chance I'm coming back. Man, I'm so happy right now. I'm busy all the time.
Right.
But I'm on my schedule busy.
Right.
So, and I ain't got to do nothing that I don't want to.
Did you see the Brock interview I did over the summer?
No, I didn't know you talked to Brock.
I talked. It was like it was a 2-minute interview.
Brock handled it the way he should have.
Oh, it went. And it went everywhere. It did 1.5 million views or something like that on YouTube because he doesn't do interviews, Brock.
No.
And for some reason, they had him doing press for the video game, and it was one of those. It was like a press party, and everybody could stand up and do an interview. Like a quick, here's a camera, back and forth, standing deal. And he was there with Heyman. And so I got up there, and he was already in an ornery mood, in a Brock mood. And Heyman was like, the camera was on, and he was like, Sam, you better make this good. You got 2 questions. Go ahead. And I was like, okay, 2 questions. And I looked at Brock and said, what's the haps? And
What'd he say?
he just looked at me. He's staring at me. And I'm staring back, and I'm like, oh, my God. I'm trying to strategize this thing. And I'm like, I gotta go with it. I have to.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't even know what that means. What the fuck does that mean? What kind of question is that? It's like, what's the haps? And
What was your follow-up?
Then the follow-up is, I go, okay, hey, if Conor McGregor stepped into WWE, because they're not gonna fight in a cage.
Right.
Brock is twice the size of him. But if Conor McGregor stepped into WWE, would you want to fight him? Because that was when Conor McGregor was running his mouth about the wrestlers. And he gave me another look. And I was like, oh, boy. And then he just goes, look, I take shits bigger than that kid. And he goes off on this tirade against him. And then he looks at me and he goes, now get the fuck out of here.
But see, that was the perfect question because it ties in his old background.
Right.
Conor called out a bunch of those cats. A lot of them bit in and tried to respond back.
Right.
And Brock just left it alone. But it's common ground, and I'm sure he's got at some level a level of respect for what the kid does as far as box office.
Sure.
And certainly vice versa on part of Conor. But a great question. And then the fact that he cussed you out and told you to get the fuck out of here, that's kind of icing on the cake.
Great.
He
I loved
meant
it.
he meant that in a good way.
Right? Yeah, I'm sure.
Hey,
I'll take your word for it. Brock.
He meant that in a good Christian way.
Yeah. Believe me, I want to say it 5 days a week, so I'm happy Brock did.
That's how he wants to end the morning show every day. This is a good question for you that Jim was asking me on the car ride here. Do you think the reception for you, because, everybody knows the legend, would be better in an urban black bar, say it's a bar, whatever. It's like a urban black crowd or a country western bar. Where do they react more warmly
If you walk in.
to Stone Cold?
Man, I think it'd be the same in both places.
You do, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I was telling Jim that thing crossed all barriers.
You get that response everywhere, right? They're just happy to see you.
Yeah, in South Texas, in Walmart.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it'd be the same thing.
Everywhere.
Yeah. And that's not me bragging.
No.
Question, that's answered.
No, I asked Sam too.
Yeah.
The appeal, because I'm like, does the appeal of certain wrestlers just crosses all boundaries? I think with a lot of those guys it does, but the appeal of certain guys just crosses every social boundary, every color boundary. It's just wherever you go.
But I always looked at what I was doing back in the day, and then when I kind of started breaking it down and looking at other guys that were pretty damn over, like Shawn Michaels. Shawn was kind of a guy when, okay, if you look at Stone Cold, ass-kicking guy. He ain't trying to steal your girlfriend. He's just out there talking shit. He's entertaining. If you like bad guys or good guys. I mean, if this is a piece of pie right here, I was edgy enough or active enough that the kids dug me, but also I had that old school respect from the people that watched wrestling, back when they were 50s, 60s. Even the old people liked me. So I had really a whole pie demographic that liked me. Shawn Michaels, on the other hand, that, back in the day before I really got into the business, I was like, hey, man, that guy ain't no good. He's a high spot artist, good-looking guy. So he didn't have me in that pie right there.
Right.
So a lot of guys didn't like Shawn because he was so good-looking. So, and maybe some of the older people didn't like him. He was too cocky.
Right.
But he was, one of the best performers in the history of the business, and I love Shawn. But when I looked at the pie that I had in my prime, I had it all. As far as, whether it's chicks, guys, old people, young guy, colored people, white people, this, that, or whatever, I had them all.
Yeah.
And that's why I looked at it. And, man, some people you look at, you go back and watch an old Rock and Roll Express match. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, they played rock and roll music, and it's a shrill pitch, and it's all the girls.
Right.
Now, the old people love them too, But, man, you talk about drawing women to those houses. Go watch some old rock and roll matches. When they come out, you hear a different reaction, when people go out. When the glass breaks, it's just through the roof. But when they played that rock and roll music, I mean, it was just the chicks love rock and roll.
Right.
Watch some old matches with
I
them.
will.
And watch them, probably some Midnight Express stuff, or them against Arn and Ole. You'll dig it.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get you, sucker, and then I'm going to watch some Rock and Roll Express matches. I got homework.
You got homework to do, kid. So they can check out the show on Sirius.
Yep, Jim
Monday
Norton
through
and Sam
Friday.
Roberts.
Monday through Friday, yeah.
Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern, XM 103, Sirius 206. We're also going to have a podcast out on iTunes very soon where it'll be like the best hour or something, 2 hours maybe of the week. We'll put it up on iTunes.
That's cool because you already got your Sam Roberts Wrestling podcast, but this is a good way to get
Let everybody know what we're doing over there.
But cherry pick some stuff, and
Right.
basically get a free show out of it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And if you're digging it, subscribe to SiriusXM.
Awesome.
Okay, now on Twitter, you're not Sam.
Right.
At not Sam.
Right.
Explain to me this gimmick, this character. How did you come up with at not Sam?
The deep meaning?
Yeah, what the fuck's going on? Because he's got Jim Norton. I want
Right.
to see what the fuck that's all about here in a minute, because how would you come up with at Jim Norton? But first you.
Wow.
Not Sam. Why?
Well,
Why?
You're right. You're right to ask. It's really a terrible story, but when I was in college, I wanted to start a website, write stuff, whatever, just, do something creative. And so I was like, okay, it's got to be simple. I wanted samroberts.com. Taken. I was like, okay, you know what? Sam.com. That's even easier. Taken. And I was like, is not Sam.com taken? And it wasn't. And then that word, not Sam, was just like, oh, I like the way it sounds. So I just took it. And then ever since then, everything that comes out, I just try to register not Sam, not Sam, not Sam.
It's also what women will say when you say, who do you want to fuck?
You were just waiting.
And so from humble beginnings as a sociology major, has built a global empire under the Not Sam franchise tag.
That's right.
Jim Norton. Now tell me the thinkings behind this.
But that was all. It was someone got it for me. A fan got it for me and turned it over to me.
God damn, I used to have a SteveAustin.com website, and some cocksucker over in England or wherever had been squatting on that motherfucker forever.
Oh, that
over 20
one, yes.
years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I ain't going to pay nobody to give me a damn website that they don't even use. So, but you actually had fan.
No, that was for Twitter. For the website, they cyber squatted for years, and I finally.
What did you do?
I used eatabullet.com. That was different. I went to eatabullet.com. It became my website. And then I finally got jimnorton.com. They just forgot to renew it once. I never offered them money. Pounced on it.
I'm going to hit the stop button unless y'all got something to add to this fucking
This
man.
was very fun,
This is
man.
great.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys. God damn it, I'm trying to win a fucking award with this podcast. Cocksucker. I'm back to Sam Robertson. Jim Norton.
Thank you.
Jim, could you please retrieve my sleep apnea machine? I'm having a global meltdown. Hey, guys, thanks for coming by the house.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
All right, everybody, give me the go-home cue. It's time to wrap up this podcast and ride off in the sunset. But before I do, I've got to give you a little reminder. This Sunday, November 13th, 9 Central. Don't forget, Broken Skull Challenge kicks off on CMT. The baddest, toughest, coolest show on television is back. And it's going to be back this coming Sunday, November 13th, 9 Central. Set your DVRs. Set your DVRs. Attention. Set your DVRs. 9 Central on CMT for Broken Skull Challenge. Hey, man, I've been talking about it. It's finally happening. All them shirts that I've been talking about wearing on Broken Skull Challenge, we're going to start releasing them on ProWrestlingTees.com/Steve Austin tomorrow or BrokenSkullRanch.com. And there's some badass T-shirts. I really dig them. They're all the shirts I wore on the new season of Broken Skull Challenge. Hey, man, speaking of beer, well, I wasn't speaking of beer, but I will speak of it now. The best damn IPA on the planet is Broken Skull IPA at El Segundo Brewing Company. You can also get it at Whole Foods and Total Wines if you live in California. If you don't, check out InsideTheCellar.com and see if they ship to your state. And I appreciate y'all supporting the sponsors of the Steve Austin Podcast. They're the ones who let me do this for you free twice a week. So big thanks to DDPYoga.com. Go to DDPYoga.com/Austin. Get 15% off the DDP Yoga program and 3 months of full access to the DDP Yoga Now app. to DraftKings. Go to DraftKings.com and use the promo code UNLEASHED to play for free with your first deposit this weekend. To MeUndies, go to MeUndies.com/Steve Austin to get 20% off your first purchase. To Bowl and Branch, go to bowlandbranch.com and use the promo code Steve to get $50 off your first set of sheets. And to BetDSI, sign up at BetDSI.com and use the promo code Austin25 to get $25 free just for trying the service. And, of course, to Amazon, who have been supporting this podcast since day one. Amazon is the best place to get the Broken Skull cold steel knife, just $75 for the most badass pocket knife on the planet. And if you order the Broken Skull cold steel knife through my Amazon links, Amazon will kick back a couple of bucks to the podcast. It won't cost you nothing extra. There are no hidden fees or charges. You can buy whatever you plan on buying and help out the podcast in the process. And you can find my Amazon links by going to podcast1.com. Click on the Killer Deals button in the top right corner of the page and then hitting the Steve Austin Show button. I got Amazon links for USA, UK, and Canada. So again, just go to podcast1.com. Click the Killer Deals button in the top right corner, then click on the Steve Austin Show. Bookmark it so you can find it easier. And hey, keep listening. The 60-second AP News headlines are coming up next. Until then, my name is Steve Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
Download new episodes of Steve Austin Unleashed every Thursday at podcast1.com. That's podcastone.com.